Welcome everyone. My name is Katie and I will be your moderator. And today's webinar is Stop Losing to PPOs, How to Take Back Control of Your Reimbursements. I'm really excited to welcome Chloe Hironaka, Sales Coordinator at Unitas PPO Solutions, as our speaker this evening. And before we get started, I'll take a moment to go over some quick housekeeping. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat and we will respond via email to any of those questions. And CE is not available during this webinar tonight. So Chloe, thank you so much for taking the time and being with us today, and I'll pass it over to you now.
Thanks, Katie. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to tune in to today's webinar. Super excited to speak with you about how you can stop losing to PPOs and specifically how to take back control of your PPO reimbursements. As mentioned, my name is Chloe. I'm a sales coordinator here at Unitas, and I am honored to have the pleasure of speaking with you today. So we're going to be covering a lot of great information today. We're going to be going over our PPO negotiation and optimization framework. And the three key parts of the framework that we are going to be covering are first, how to identify and map out your specific PPO participation. We're going to talk about our proven three-step PPO negotiation framework. And then we're going to talk about your PPO return on investment going through this process. So before we dive into everything, I probably should give you a little bit more background on our company, Unitas, and what our credentials are so you know how we know how to actually fix all of these issues you run into with your PPOs. So Unitas has been around since 2011. So for about the past 13 going on 14 years now, we've had the opportunity to work with thousands of practices all across the country. We've had clients in every state. We currently represent over 2,000 active clients on service with us and have over a team of over 100 experienced PPO insurance consultants. So we have a lot of data and experience going through this process. It's tried and true, and we know what we've implemented for offices that's worked really well as insurance pitfalls we want to ensure providers are avoiding with their PPOs. So we stay super current in the industry, and that's really good because the insurance industry is constantly evolving. There's a lot of state specifics, there's a lot of PPO specifics, and so just like in anything, the more data and experience you can have there, really the better. So also, before we jump into everything, one other thing I wanted to take a moment to go over is our PPO negotiation quick start guide. Like I said, we're going to be covering a lot of information and we will be moving through things relatively quickly today. And so in case I move through something a little quick for you and you didn't quite catch it, I want you to have this as a reference to look back on. It's a great resource. It's really going to cover everything that we are going through today. So a great resource for you and your team. You can simply go to www.ppguide.com or simply scan the QR code on the screen. It will lead you directly to the guide and you can simply download from there. But for being a part of today's webinar, we want you to have access to this framework. So I still highly encourage you to take notes and write down things that come to you or questions as we're going through things so that you can save those. But again, this will be a really great recap for you. So jumping right in, the first thing we're going to talk about and how to take back control of your PPO reimbursements is identifying and mapping out your specific PPO participation. This is a super key step. I know you're super anxious to jump in and start negotiating right away and we want higher fees now, today. I totally get that mentality. But if you don't take a second to take a step back and see where your baseline is, it's not only going to be hard to track what your results are, but also you're probably going to end up wasting a lot of time reaching out to the wrong people and for the wrong things. So when it comes to mapping out your specific PPO participation, there's a couple key things we want to keep in mind here. We want to make sure that we're identifying the participation for each specific provider and location, and that we're documenting that. We want to make sure that we're receiving and documenting your actual fee schedules. And we also want to look at your UCRs and compare and repair any UCR versus reimbursement discrepancies. So those are the key 3 items that we're going to be going through for this first step. So when it comes to just simply discovering and mapping out your PPO participation, the first thing we want to keep in mind is that there's really 3 different ways you can even be considered an in-network participating provider. It's all based on how you credential and will totally determine the fee schedule you end up utilizing. So rather than just calling up provider relations and simply asking if the provider is in network or not, or instead of just accepting their answer of saying, yes, you're in network, we really got to dig a little bit deeper than that and get a little bit more specific. Because again, there's these 3 different ways that I'm going to be going over next here. You can be directly contracted, you can be in network through another PPO, or you can be a network through what's called an umbrella or third-party administrator. And because of these different relationships, in my experience, most offices end up being in network with quite a few more PPOs than they maybe thought or wanted to be. And it's because of these different relationships between the insurances. So again, when we're verifying that, we want to make sure we're doing it for each specific doctor at the location. And if you have multiple locations, you want to make sure you're going through that process for each individual location, because I've seen this time and time again where multi-provider practices will have varied participation between the providers, even though they're contracted at the same location and same tax ID number. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to be contracted the same way or paid on the same fee schedule, especially if credentialing was done at different times or by different people. That's when those discrepancies start to creep in there. And even for doctors that have multiple locations and it's the same provider that's going back and forth between the 2 locations and they're under the same tax ID, same thing. It doesn't mean that the participation is going to be the same across each location. There can be discrepancies there. So you want to be specific on that. And you're going to call the insurance and you're going to ask what the situation is. And to help you do this, we actually are giving you a little bonus for being part of this webinar. It's a provider relations contact list. So that should help with this task immensely when you're going through all your PPOs and verifying what each doctor's status is. So what I recommend is, as you're making your calls, you can compile all the information in a spreadsheet. What I would recommend is on the first column, you can list out the insurance companies, and then you can just in the subsequent columns list out each provider at the practice. And then that way you can kind of go through like a checklist and document each specific provider's status with each individual insurance company. But when you call and you ask, you can just simply ask, how is my doctor participating with you? And you'll say that specific provider's name, and they'll verify your address that you're checking for and most likely your tax ID number. And if they say that you're directly contracted, then the next question you want to ask is what your effective date is, which they should be able to provide this if you have a direct contract. And then you'll want to ask for a copy of your current fee schedule. You'll want to get both of those things. Even if you think you already have your fee schedule, you should take the opportunity to ask for it just to make sure you have the most current one on file, since you're already taking the time to call them and verify your status anyways. If you are not directly contracted, then they'll tell you you're either completely out of network or they will tell you that you're in network through a leasing arrangement, and you would want to verify which specific company they have you participating through. Then you will go to that company to verify your status if you're directly contracted, which you would be in that scenario, and get your current fee schedule from them. So to kind of break down those different participation types further, there's again three. The first way you can be a network is through a direct contract. The only way you can have a direct contract means at some point you submit a credentialing application to that specific insurance company. So when those insured patients come to your practice, you treat them, submit the claim, you're going to be reimbursed according to that insurance company's fee schedule. So if you have a direct contract with this PPO, again, you know that's who you are going to get paid off of. They should be able to give you an effective date and your current fee schedule. But in addition to our direct contracts, so that used to be the only way you could be in network. And when most providers, when they hear the term in network, that's the relationship we tend to automatically assume. But we also now have what we call PPO to PPO leasing. So essentially what's happened is the insurance companies have partnered together in which they agree to lease their providers out or share the provider's contract with these other PPOs that they formed this partnership with. So what it means for the provider is if you go into a direct contract or submit a credentialing agreement to this specific insurance company, they can technically share that, lease you out to these other PPOs they form that partnership with. So when those insured patients come to your practice and you treat them, you still submit the claim back to the patient's insurance for processing just like you would normally, but you're going to get reimbursed according to your original direct contract of the company that's linking you to that other insurance. So again, this is why a lot of providers really do end up being in network with more PPOs than they thought. A lot of times offices will tell me, I had a patient come in and they told me that we were in network, but I never remember submitting a credentialing application to that insurance company. But I called them and sure enough, we are in network. Or I submitted the claim and sure enough, it processed as in network. That's usually a result of this PPO to PPO leasing. Another obvious sign is that when you get your EOB back, the fees are obviously different because they're going to reflect, again, this insurance company's fee schedule rather than the one the patient is coming from or that the patient has. And it will usually say this company's name somewhere on the EOB as well. So those are all signs of PPO to PPO leasing. There are tons of examples of it because almost every PPO is involved in some sort of relationship like that now. And then lastly, we have the umbrella networking, which is a very similar concept to PPO to PPO leasing. There's really 5 major umbrella networks. So they're not insurance companies. That's the difference here. They're third-party administrators. A lot of people will shorten the name to TPAs, if you've heard that term, or we nickname them umbrellas because they are networks. So they are designed to recruit a lot of providers and allow the providers to access several PPOs through their network. So each umbrella will have a vast payer list of all the PPOs that by the provider contracting with them then has access to. And all those PPOs that fall under their network would in essence be reimbursed according to the umbrella network's fee schedule. So obviously, as you can see with all these different participation types, it sometimes makes it a little confusing to know who you really are and aren't in network with and what fee schedule you're using. And again, that's where a lot of the discrepancies comes in. And so that's why we really want to do the due diligence to clarify this and verify exactly who you're in network with and how, because that's really going to tell you who you need to be reaching out to for what you're specifically asking them for, and what opportunity there is to improve your fee. Like I said, as we're going through that process of verifying the participation status, you definitely want to make sure that you are receiving and documenting your actual current fee schedule reimbursements. Please do not trust what you have in your practice management software or in a file folder in the desk of the office. The insurances do make automatic adjustments on the fee schedules, especially between October and January is when a lot of companies will do reviews automatically and make adjustments there. So you really want to make sure that you have that baseline so that, again, once we get into the negotiation process, you can actually see what the true increase is. So to get your current fee schedules, what I would recommend doing is as you're on the phone verifying your status, ask for it and you can coordinate with the rep. Sometimes they will fax it or email it to you. Sometimes they will have you log on to your provider portal and you can download it straight from there. And then obviously once you obtain that, you would want to update Dentrix or whatever practice management software you use with your current fee schedules. The next step in really prepping for the negotiation process would be comparing and repairing your UCRs versus your reimbursement. So what we mean by that is before you head into the negotiation process, ideally, you should be increasing your office fees. That's our recommendation. You really actually should be increasing your office fees annually, even if it's just a small bump, because we have seen a correlation between what the insurances are willing to negotiate and reimburse you and what your procedures are priced at. So high UCR fees can correlate with higher reimbursement rates. If you aren't showing that you are ever updating your office fees, I have offices tell me all the time that are super PPO heavy. They'll say, what's the point of updating my office fee? I'm just getting the contracted rate from the insurance company anyways. Well, again, if you look at it from the insurance company's perspective, to them, it's like, well, if you're never updating your office fees, maybe have your costs not gone up? Why should we be paying you more of a reimbursement? Right? So it's all a cycle. It all goes together. So also on that note, please make sure that you are submitting your UCRs on your claim, not the insurance fee. That's a common billing mistake that I will see with offices, and that obviously, again, from the insurance perspective, makes it seem like they're reimbursing you 100% of your UCR, which is absolutely not true. You need to show that discrepancy to them. So as your costs are going up, you want to update your UCRs. You want to reflect that on your and then that will reflect with higher reimbursements. So with that said, as a baseline, as a minimum, what we recommend doing is you can get your current office fees. And if it's a little overwhelming to look at all of them, I would say narrow it down to your top 20 or 35, put them in a spreadsheet, and then you're actually going to plug in all the subsequent columns, all of your reimbursements that correspond to those procedure codes. And then that way you can see the difference, and you just want to make sure that no UCR is at or below your highest reimbursing PPO fee schedule. So again, that should be obvious, but if you have any that are below or at the same rate, you need to increase it. That's a big sign to increase. But really, what I would recommend doing is also utilizing a percentile-based analysis tool. We use the Henry Schein fee analysis. It'll give you the data that you need. It'll show the different percentiles for your specific area. And then that way you can compare where you're at and get those updated. So again, very important part of the process before heading into negotiations. It's going to help you set that tone. Now, before heading into our second part of the process, which is the negotiations, I did want to throw this back up here for anyone who's just hopping on, maybe hopped on here a little late or missed it earlier. It's our PPO negotiation quick start guide. You can go to www.ppguide.com, or you can simply scan the QR code on the screen. It will lead you directly there. This will recap everything that we just went through in the first step of the framework and the step 2 and 3 that we're about to go through as well. So take a moment, make sure you save that, make sure you take advantage of this resource. So now we're going to talk about our 3-step PPO negotiation framework. So now for the fun part, the negotiations. With this, there's really 3 tips that we have. You want to ensure that you aren't wasting time on the wrong procedures. We want to make sure that we're strategically approaching the negotiation process. And then we're going to talk about how you can compare your offers that you're receiving from the different PPOs. So, when it comes to ensuring that you don't waste time on the wrong procedures, this is where we want to narrow it down a little bit. So maybe you already did this in the previous step when updating your office fees, but you really want to narrow it down. For general offices, we say to typically focus on your top 35 procedure codes. 20 to 35 is a really good starting point. If you're a specialist, you can look at everything. It's obviously a little bit more narrowed down there already. But to do this, the easy way to do it is you can export your 12-month production summary. You should be able to do this off your practice management software. If you don't know how, there's lots of instructions. You can also contact the customer support and they should be able to walk you through it. But basically, you just want a report that will show you the frequency of each procedure you've done in the last year. So you want it to show the procedure code, the quantity, and production. And then that way you can rank it and pull out those top 35, the highest grossing procedures. And then you're going to use this in the next step as well when we're actually comparing the offers that we get. And the reason we're doing this is because not only will a lot of times when negotiating will the insurances ask what your top procedure codes are that you're most concerned with increasing, but again, when we're comparing the offers, at the end of the day, this is really what's going to make the biggest difference to your overall revenue of the practice. So we want to make sure they're increasing where it really matters, where it's really gonna count there. So when it comes to approaching the negotiation process, one important thing to consider is that most insurances will consider a provider eligible to negotiate every 2 to 3 years. So most companies it's every 2. There's a couple where it could be every 3, or sometimes you could get on a special deal where it's every 3, but that's from when you last negotiated or from when you were originally contracted at the location. So if it's prior to that, just know that they will probably tell you no, or that you aren't quite due for negotiations yet, if it hasn't been that time frame. But once it's, as long as it hasn't, you haven't gotten a custom increase, if it's just been an automatic adjustment the insurance has made, that doesn't count. If you've reached out and they've denied you, that doesn't count. You still would be eligible. So you definitely want to reach out to the provider relations and request that increase. Obviously, the verbiage and strategy there is going to vary for each company. Sometimes it's call-in requests, sometimes it's emailing, but you'll just simply want to provide your office information and say that you would like a fee review or a fee increase. When you're asking, pay attention to your PPO participation that we just went through and any leasing arrangements. You really need to reach out and ask for increases on the fee schedules for the main payer. So for example, if you find out that you're in network with Guardian, but paid under Aetna's contracted fees, meaning you don't have a direct contract with Guardian, but Guardian is in network through Aetna, you're not going to reach out to Guardian and ask for an increase because they're just going to say, refer to Aetna. You're going to go to Aetna and you're going to ask for a fee increase since that's who you have the contract with. They're the one controlling the reimbursements. That's who the contract is through. Now, once you get those offers, once you're going back and forth and they're coming in, it is extremely important to make sure that you are looking very closely at these offers. This sounds obvious, but I'm telling you, there's been multiple occasions in which I will speak with offices who have accepted an increased offer, not realizing that it actually was an overall decrease to their practice for the specific work that they were doing. And that's obviously very saddening, especially considering that you are then locked into those fees for 2 years before you're eligible to negotiate. So being negotiating savvy, you need to make sure that they're giving you increases on the codes that matter. Obviously, them giving you $100 increase on a procedure that you're never doing, but then a $5 decrease on something you're doing every day, that's probably not going to work for the office. So that is common for the insurances to sometimes, instead of doing across the board increase right away, they will increase some, decrease others. So again, that's why we've identified your top 20 to 35 procedures. And when you get the offers back, I would say do another spreadsheet and list out your top 20 to 35 procedures in the first column. And the second column, list out your corresponding UCRs, your office fees. And then in the next column, the third column, list out your current fee schedule that you've obtained, those fees, and then in the fourth column, plug in the new fee offer that they've given you. So that way you can actually see that comparison on each specific procedure. And then once the offer looks good and you're comfortable with the offer, and or the insurance says, okay, yeah, this is the best offer that we can give, and you accept it, you sign off on it, they will give you an effective date. Keep in mind, the fees typically don't go into effect right away. It typically is going to take them 30 to 90 days for you to start getting paid on them. And so make note of that effective date. Make sure, again, you get the new fee schedule into your practice management software. And then you want to audit your EOBs to make sure that they are getting paid on the correct reimbursement after that effective date. Because if they process on the old fee schedule, you will want to contact the insurance and get them reprocessed. Alrighty, so we are moving quite along on everything. The last step we wanted to go through is the calculation you can use when forecasting your negotiation return on investment, and really how you can take this all to the next level to make sure that you're truly maximizing your reimbursements. So in order to do that, we want to ensure that your PPO fees are competitive for your area. We want to look at optimization options and make sure we're minimizing risks there, but also maximizing the benefits. That's a great alternative route to negotiations. And then again, we also will talk about the return you can see going through this framework. So in order to really compare that your PPO offers are competitive for your area, that really is where we come in handy. That's where Unitas has the data to actually compare offers and determine if they are competitive for your area. Like I said, we have over 2,000 active clients. We've done this for years. We've literally worked with thousands of practices nationwide. And so we do know what would be considered a good competitive offer or what to expect from a given PPO. And we have access to a lot of insurance contacts that a lot of practices don't have access to. And we know the different verbiage and strategies that are going to be most effective when it comes to negotiations and what works best for each PPO, how to approach that process. And so again, that's just going to help all be to your benefit in getting you those higher fees. And really where a lot of our expertise and data comes in handy is that we have years of optimization experience as well. So optimization, to kind of explain what that is, the easiest way to think of it is shifting how you're contracted so that you're still able to be considered an in-network participating provider, but utilize a different company's higher reimbursing fee schedule. And we're able to do that because so many of these insurances are partnered together that we can actually use those relationships to get you paid on a higher fee schedule. So for a lot of offices, unfortunately, when those relationships go unmanaged, not only does it make it confusing to know who you're in network with and how, but it also a lot of times results in the office defaulting to a lower fee schedule than they should be. And so we can really go in, clean up the contracting to prevent that from happening. And again, instead find the most profitable path to be in network. So when we are negotiating, not only are we reaching out and verifying or negotiating all your current direct contracts, but we also are reaching out to all the companies either you're completely out of network with or you're only a network because of these leasing arrangements. And we can go to them and negotiate fee proposals, basically saying, hey, if this provider was to become directly contracted with you instead of using this insurance company's fee schedule, what's the best fee you would offer? And even for the companies you're already direct with, like I said, we'll start with negotiations, but we're also going to compare the different companies that they could go through. And if that's going to pay a higher fee, then that's when we might consider terminating the direct contract or opting out of the relationship. So that way you can participate through, again, a higher reimbursing company. So that's why I say it really opens up a lot of doors, because if you just rely on the negotiations, at the end of the day, a company can only come up so much, and you can only do it every 2 years. So if you aren't very satisfied by the increased offer, or they aren't willing to negotiate, it's a very minimal increase, it's highly likely you could probably shift it to get in network through someone else that would pay a higher fee. Or on the reverse, what you have to be careful of is, even if you negotiate an awesome fee schedule, or you have a great company in there that's paying you a very high reimbursement, if all this rerouting is going on behind the scenes, like you have a lot of other direct contracts that are doing this leasing, you probably aren't getting paid on it as much as you should or could be. So that's why it all goes hand in hand. Again, why we really want to see how you're currently in network, because then we can take it a step further past just doing negotiation and look at all of these optimization opportunities. It is very complex. There is a lot of risks involved, and different plan specifics you want to be aware of, and timelines of things. But again, that's where, because we have such a vast client base and our experience, we have been able to successfully negotiate and optimize for many practices. So with that said, why I'm so passionate about this and wanted to take the time to share it with you is because it really can make a big difference in the overall revenue of the practice. And the best thing about increasing your reimbursements is it's one of the unique ways that you can increase the overall revenue of the practice without changing anything you're doing on the clinical side. You're not treating additional patients, you're not increasing production, you're just getting paid more for all the work that you're already doing. So it really is giving yourself a raise. Again, it's taking back control of your PPO situation and getting those higher reimbursement rates. So most of our clients that have gone through this service, this framework that I've shared with you today, conservatively will see a 20% increase across the board on their reimbursements, which really is pretty huge. A below average result, I would say, would be considered a 10% increase. Above average would be considered 25% range or above. So a really quick and easy way that you can use those percentages to project your overall annual revenue increase is if you take your gross annual production before write-offs. So here we say $1 million, just based off a single location, single provider practice. And then you take your percentage of patients under negotiable PPOs. So the reason we say negotiable is because I typically exclude Delta from this estimation, just because Delta, out of all the PPOs, currently is the one I would say your hands are probably going to be the most tied with. They historically do not negotiate with us, or I feel like directly with dental offices. From what our experience has been, it's very rare to see them deviate from their standard fee schedules or the automatic increases that they give, and they don't partner with anyone, so you cannot optimize them. So if you take your PPO patient base excluding Delta, that's why I bring this down to 50%. You can multiply that against your gross annual production, which in this case would give you what we consider your negotiable production, which would be $500,000, since that's 50% of $1 million. So it's $500,000 worth of your revenue that's being capped based on your reimbursements. That if we were to increase that 20% increase, that's $100,000 annual revenue increase for the practice. So an additional 100 grand, again, you're getting for doing the same work you're already you're already doing. So it starts to add up very quickly, even at the 10% range. That's a $50,000 increase, 25%, $125,000 annual revenue increase. And this is money you're getting year after year after year. So just to show you some case studies of doctors that we've had the pleasure of working with, we worked with Dr. Morgan in North Carolina. They had 5 negotiated contracts, 2 optimizations, and that resulted in an annual revenue increase of $64,000 for the practice. Dr. Baker down in Texas had 5 negotiated PPO contracts and 3 optimizations, and it yielded $79,000 for the practice. And Dr. Young in Florida had 7 negotiated PPO contracts and 4 optimizations, and that gave them a $100,000 annual revenue increase for their practice. So it really makes a difference. And in closing, just to recap, the 3 key strategies when it comes to increasing the reimbursements, how you're going to do that is by first having a very clear understanding of your PPO participation and your current reimbursements. So you want to make sure that you're verifying that for each provider, each location with each insurance company, and that you're collecting all your current fee schedules. You're going to tactfully approach the negotiation process. You're not going to waste time negotiating the wrong procedures or accept an offer in which they decrease procedures that you're doing all the time and giving you increases on ones that you're never touching. And you're going to really maximize your negotiation opportunities by partnering with us, Unitas, the PPO experts, to help evaluate additional opportunities to maximize your in-network participation. So I'm sure you are probably feeling a little bit like this right now, right? Information overload. I know it's a lot, and I know that I'm okay to admit that this isn't the most exciting subject matter. But again, it is important, and I am very passionate about it because I believe that providers deserve to have a handle and clarity on their PPO situation, and that you deserve to get paid more for all the hard work that you are doing in treating your patients. And so we want to help you do that. So if it's okay with you, I'm hoping that we can make you an offer to hopefully act on this sooner than later. So again, make sure you have your PPO Quick Start Guide downloaded. You can use the QR code, head to the website, www.ppoguide.com. So you will have that as a recap. But before you end this webinar and you go back to scheduling appointments or treating patients, I know you're super busy. You've already taken the past, over a half an hour here to listen to me yap about this. Don't waste any more time. Don't let more weeks, months, years pass not getting paid what you deserve. Don't keep leaving this money on the table. Go right now to our website, www.ppoguide.com/call, or again, scan the QR code and go ahead and schedule a free 30-minute consultation with us so that we can review your current PPO situation. We can talk about your office specifically and what pain points you're experiencing with your PPOs, and we can come up with a service that you're going to be best suited for and be a part of your team and help you on the path to higher fees. So it's a totally complimentary consultation. Just again, scan that QR code, head over to the website, schedule it now. I promise it takes like 2 minutes to set it up. You just have to simply pick a date and time that works best for you, enter in your office contact information, and one of our consultants will reach out to you and go over everything. So in addition to scheduling a call, for being a part of this webinar and completing a consultation call with us, we are offering these awesome limited time bonuses. The first being the PPO Provider Relations Master List that I referenced earlier. So obviously we make hundreds of phone calls to PPO insurances every day. We're contacting them every day, every month, we're doing hundreds of calls. So we have compiled a pretty sweet master contact list, and this is going to save you hours of sitting on hold, because there's nothing worse than sitting on hold and then them keep transferring you around, and then you find out you just are completely in the wrong department and it ends up getting nowhere. So this is just going to make sure that you get right to the source, right to the right place, and makes it way easier to collect your PPO participation or verify anything that you need with the insurance company. So you can print this off, tape it up in your office, keep it in your desk drawer, just keep it handy. It's typically a $199 value that you would be getting completely free. The next awesome bonus is our e-guide. It's 35 most common insurance problems and how to avoid them. So over the years of us doing this, over a decade now, we've compiled the top PPO solutions for our most commonly asked questions. So this e-guide really covers anything from downcoding to balance billing to out-of-network benefits, office information changes, like when it comes to changing your tax ID number or updating your business name, key steps when it comes to adding an associate, getting them credentialed to your office, what needs to happen there, plus much, much more. So I know it's hard and sometimes frustrating when you have these different nuanced situations with the PPOs, knowing who to ask, where to go, and you really obviously want someone on the provider side who understands, and that's us. And so this will hopefully help you save hours of time trying to solve these different PPO related problems. This should be a really great resource and reference for you. So this is normally valued at $299 that, again, you would be getting completely free. And the last awesome bonus here is our fee schedule analysis tool. So I know throughout this, I was saying, okay, you'll want to make a spreadsheet for this and that. Well, with this, it's substantially going to cut down on the number of spreadsheets that you have to make or figure out how to do. So if you aren't the most Excel savvy person, no need to fear. This is designed for you. This is actually the exact same tool we use for our clients when we're analyzing their UCRs and fee schedules. So it already is going to have automated formulas and calculations in there for you, which is super awesome. Again, it's foolproof, but this is, again, going to help you identify if your UCRs or your office fees are priced too low, how your reimbursements compare to each other, to the other PPOs, and what your highest reimbursing PPOs are, what your lowest reimbursing PPOs are. So super easy to use. It's just this online spreadsheet, normally valued at $499, that you would be getting completely free. So just to recap what you're going to get, because I know that was a lot, first you're going to go right now before you close out your computer, get back to your busy day. You're going to go to www.ppoguide.com/call. So you might already have that up from getting the quick start guide. You just have to add that /call, or you can scan the QR code and our calendar will pull up. There's lots of dates and times available. Find one that works for you, enter in your office information, and just get scheduled for a call. Again, you've already taken the time sitting through this webinar. It will be a tragedy if you let more time pass accepting these low reimbursement rates. So while you're all pumped up, ready to go, let's just keep it rolling. So you're going to schedule the call, and then doing that call, you're getting a complimentary PPO evaluation, and we're going to see, what service you'd be best suited for, how we can help your office specifically. We'll go over all those specifics, answer your questions for you. You're going to get the e-guide of the 35 common insurance problems, valued at $199. You're going to get your provider relations master list, and you're going to get your PPO fee schedule analysis tool. So all three of those bonuses, plus hours of save time, which we know is priceless, especially when you're running a busy office, and you're getting higher PPO reimbursement rates, which is also exponential and priceless. So really, you're getting a total value of almost $1,000 completely free all you have to do is go schedule a consultation with us at ppoguide.com/go. So please take that opportunity. We'd love to speak with you, myself or one of our other consultants. And in closing, I just wanted to go over a few FAQs just with our last few minutes here. I know that you might be having some questions. Again, I hopefully will touch on some of them here. If I don't get to them all, please take the opportunity to schedule the call, and I'm happy to answer, and I know our other consultants are too, answer any other questions that have come up for you. But just kind of some common ones that we'll get. The first being, if you're thinking about dropping or adding PPOs, is that something that we can help with? Absolutely. Absolutely. Even if you are thinking that you're in the position that you want to start dropping PPOs, please talk with us, because like we mentioned with all those leasing arrangements, it's a domino effect. Whenever you make any changes to a contract, whether it's adding one, dropping one, or even negotiating the fees, it's most likely going to affect your participation status and or reimbursements with another company, if not several other companies. So you definitely do not, again, I've heard this story 1,000 times from offices. You do not want to go in and terminate a PPO that you're just dying to get out of network with, and then accidentally end up falling out of network with something that you have a ton of patients with that you were not planning on going out of network with. That is obviously a nightmare for the office, and you want to avoid that, and we can help you do that. On the reverse, again, if you're adding PPOs, same thing. It's always shocking to an office when they think that they're adding one specific insurance company that they've got all lined up, and then next thing they know, they're with 5 others. So again, we can help you make sure that you truly are only participating with the ones that you want and what are going to make sense for your practice. Another common question I will get is about adding associates. So a lot of offices have associate doctors, which is great. And sometimes when we're adding associates, it can be a little bit confusing what the process with that looks like, if you can bill them under yourself as the owner, or if they need to get credentialed individually, or how all of that works. So an important clarification I want to make is that when you are adding an associate, if you want them to be an in-network provider, they do need to get credentialed at your specific office. So even if they've been a network at other locations, they still need to do credentialing to be a network at your office specifically. And even though they're an associate and you still want all the payments to go to the owner of the practice, that's fine. You still will list the owner and your tax ID as the billing entity on the claim, but where it asks who the treating or rendering provider is, that's where you're going to make sure that you put that new associate. Ultimately, that determines how the claim processes, depending on the credentialing status of that associate for the billing address and tax ID that you've listed on the claim. So you do want to make sure that they get added. And with that, again, you want to make sure that they're credentialed the same way as the existing providers at the office if you want them to match and be paid the same, which most offices do, so that it's straightforward for the patient, and that regardless of who the patient is treated by, the claim process is the same. So you just want to make sure if the existing providers are direct, you're doing a direct contract for that associate for that insurance. If they're in network through a certain company, you want to get them in network through that company as well. You don't want to go direct with the PPO. So those are things that, again, we can help look out for and just make sure that all providers are participating the same way. And that way everything's nice and streamlined and clean for your patients and practice. And again, you aren't leaving any money on the table when providers are participating differently. I think we have time for 2 more questions. Another common one that I will get is, if you're opening or purchasing a new practice, how you go about setting up PPO contracts. Again, if you're already credentialed at somewhere else, do you need to get credentialed there as well? How does that work? So again, yes, the credentialing specific to the location. So you would want to get credentialed at that new office. However, before you credential, in an ideal scenario, whenever you're setting up PPOs under new ownership, you really want to take that as an opportunity to negotiate. Because, like I said, you can only do it every 2 years. So, if you submit that credentialing agreement without verifying what the fees are, you will be locked into those fees for 2 whole years before you're eligible to renegotiate them. So, we want to make sure that those are looking good and we can go through that process with you. And then, like I said, taking it a step further, once we have all the negotiated offers, we can also look at the different routes to participation and make sure that we contract you in that way. Lastly, a common question we'll get is working with Unitas, what do we charge, different service specifics, all of that. We have a couple different services that vary depending on your situation. We work with all different practices. We work with single locations, we work with multi locations, general dentists, all different specialties. So we've seen a lot. I would say we've seen it all, but still to this day, there's still different things that sometimes pop up, and we're constantly learning. But yeah, we work with all different practices. So we have different services designed for different scenarios based on your situation and what your goals are. And they're all going to vary in price based on that. So that's the benefit to doing a consultation call, is that we can assess what your situation is, find the service that you'd be best suited for, go over that price point with you, project your return on investment, and just make sure it's a great fit for you. But yeah, so schedule a call. We look forward to speaking with you. Thank you all so much for your time today. It was a pleasure and hope to speak with you soon.
Thanks so much, Chloe, for that wonderful presentation and all those great little tidbits you have. Um, we did record tonight's webinar, so if you have any questions that you want to revisit, we'll email that out within the next week. And we appreciate your survey via feedback. At the end of our webinar, a survey will pop up. And thank you all for joining us. Have a great evening, and we look forward to having you on future webinars. Bye, everyone.